Hey everybody, it's Debbie O'Neill of Cricut Maker Designs, and today I'm showing you how I made this acrylic lighted little mini sign using the new Cricut Maker Engraving Tool and a piece of acrylic. Now this little gadget here I bought on Amazon, and I'll link you up with this. They're inexpensive. They come with a remote control. I can change it into a bunch of different colors, or just, and there's a bunch of different things you can do with it, okay? But it's super cute. Look at that. You can make your own little mini neon sign. And then you're going to need a piece of acrylic, okay? So when you're working with the Cricut Maker, you have to make sure that your acrylic is not too thick so that it will fit with underneath the rollers of the machine. Now I'm using a piece of 1/16 inch acrylic. Okay, that's the thickness of it, and I bought it on Amazon, and it came in a 12 by 12 sheet. Okay, I'll link this up for you guys as well. Now it comes as a 12 by 12 sheet, and then you're going to need to cut it to the shape that you want to use. Now for this purpose I used a just straight edges and just made like a big rectangle because it was easier to do that, and it fit the design that I wanted to use. So you'll need this. Now this looks like it's white, but it's really clear acrylic, and it has a protective coating on it, a white film on it that we'll take off when we go to do the engraving. The thing I want to point out on the light box here, okay, this piece here is only about 3¼ inches wide, okay, this way. So you're going to have to make sure whatever the base of your acrylic piece is fits in this slot. But you could make a bigger shape, a round shape, a triangle shape, whatever you want, as long as the base of your acrylic piece will fit in here. Now it does, your acrylic piece does go in here about 3/4 of an inch, just to give you an idea of how deep this sits in here, because that'll come into play when we talk about when we're doing our design. You're going to start with a piece of acrylic. If it's not already the shape that you want, you're going to need to cut it. So for that, I bought this plastic cutter, and it is specific for cutting acrylic. Now I do want to point out that this is for acrylic. I am not using glass. You cannot engrave with the Cricut Maker Engraving Tool with glass. You must use acrylic if you want that clear look. Do not use glass. So this is a plastic cutting tool. I'm going to show you how I use this. And you need your strong grip purple mat. You're going to need a ruler with a metal edge. This is the Cricut cutting ruler, and it has a protective safety guard here, which made me feel a little more secure when I'm using this tool, not to accidentally slice my hand. You'll see this in action here in a minute. And some masking tape, because we're going to need to tape down our piece. And of course, we're going to need our Cricut Maker Engraving Tool. Okay, so this is the engraving tip, and then you'll need to have the quick swap housing. Okay, now the quick swap housing is the one that has the plastic around the top, but it's got a little plunger on the top here. Can you see that where the little silver knob is? This pushes in. That's what releases the tool tip. Let me show you how quick and easy it is to install the tip. So here it is. Now be careful, because that's sharp on the end. You can see it there. Let me hold it up. Yeah, so you can see the little engraver. What you're going to do is you're going to take your plunging tool, and it has smooth sides on it, and then it's got a little knob up here. Okay, see that little piece right there where my finger is? You want to line your tool up so that when you push the plunger in and slide this in and then release it, it fits, and it's just as easy as that. It only takes a second to install the tools. If I'm not going to use the engraving tool and I want to switch to one of the other tool tips, all I have to do is click this again and release it, and it comes right off, and then I can store this in my Cricut Maker tool holder on the bottom of my machine. Okay, so it's just as easy as that. So let me get that back on there, so we'll have that. Now let me show you what I did to cut the acrylic. Okay, so I need my ruler, and you need a self-healing mat for this process. And I had already cut this into 3 inches wide, but I need to cut this to 4 inches. So I'm going to show you how I did that using my mat. This tool is sharp. Okay, I'm just going to warn you, on the end of this it's sharp. Now this is manual labor. It will take you a second or two to cut through this. If you're cutting a much thicker piece of acrylic, I'm not sure, you may need some help doing that. This one was good enough, easy enough, because it's only 1/16 thick, but it will take a few slices. So what I'm doing is I have my piece of acrylic. I've counted over, this is going to be 5 inches, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. I've lined the edge of my ruler up with the edge of my guide on my self-healing mat. And now all I need to do is take this tool, and I'm just going to keep doing this, and it's going to make a horrible noise for you guys, okay? And I'm just going to do this multiple times. You're going to just do it several times. Just do it. I'm starting at the top and going all the way across. I am applying a little bit of pressure just to kind of get it into the groove there. So what you're doing is you're creating a groove. You don't have to go all the way through this. I'll show you here in a minute how easy it is just to snap this off. But you do want to put pressure on this side where my hand is. I'm really pushing hard down on this. Some of you may have arthritis. You may want to get a helper, somebody that can maybe do this part for you, or try to find the pieces in the shape you already want and the thickness. So I basically have cut a groove into the piece of acrylic. You can see the groove right here. Okay, now this is lined up. When I line it up, that's going to give me my 5 by 3 inch shape. And now I need to break this piece off, okay? All I have to do is basically just bend it. Easy as that. It just came right off, okay? And then I just used the tool on the back just to slice through that plastic, okay? That was really easy. So now I have my 3 inch wide and my 5 inch piece.
Now I'm going to show you how I set up to do my engraving image in Design Space. So 2 things I want to point out. One, there is a new drop down over here on to the left of your green Make It button. So if you click that, it gives you 2 choices, the Cricut Explore Family or the Cricut Maker. You need to make sure it's selected on Cricut Maker, because this was a change that was in the plugin that was done in July of 2019 for the Cricut Maker new tool set. So you're not going to be able to see the new tool set to select it if you don't have this marked at Cricut Maker. So I wanted to point that out. And then now I'm going to just pick a basic shape, because the image that I'm using would be fine to put on more of a rectangle piece of acrylic. So that's what I've selected. So I'm just taking a basic shape, and I know that that basic shape, I want it to be 3 by 5. So I've just unlocked my edit up here, and now I've changed it to that. I'm going to change this to a lighter color just so you guys can see this easier on screen. So now I have my 3 by 5 piece, because we know that that slot in the LED light box needs to be 3 inches to be able to go in there. And then I wanted probably about a 4-inch image on my acrylic piece, but I had to take into consideration that 3/4 of an inch that's going to go down inside that slot, like I showed you when we were talking about the supplies. Okay, so that's how I kind of figured out what size my image was needed to be. And I'm using this as a template, okay, because in Design Space and with your Cricut Maker machines, you cannot cut the acrylic with your machine. This is something you'll have to do manually right now, or purchase a piece that's already the right size. This is going to be my template. Now I could certainly put any kind of text on here or phrases or anything else like that, but I'm just going to use an image from Design Space, and I'm looking for a crafting image. I really like this. I'd rather be crafting. So that's what I'm going to do. I figured it'd look great in my craft studio. And when it comes in, it's going to be bigger than will fit on my already determined 3 by 5 piece. So I'll need to change this. So I'm just going to unlock it here. And then I'm going to manipulate the image until I get it to fit. It looks pretty good. And remembering that 3/4 of an inch from the bottom is going to not be available to me, basically. There we go. So once you have your image sized to fit whatever the shape is of your acrylic piece, then you need to turn off this that you've set up as your template, okay? Because you're not going to be cutting this out. So over here in the layers panel, I am just going to turn that eye off, and now we need to look at the shape again. So this is a cut file, and I know that because I look up here in my line type and it says cut. We don't want it to cut. I need to change that to engrave. So now you see not only cut, draw, and score, but you have those 4 new tool options: engrave, deboss, wave, and perforation. So we're going to hit engrave. It's going to change the image for us. So when you look over here in the layers panel, now it says engrave. All right. The next thing you're going to do is hit the Make It button, and it's going to take us over to our virtual Cricut mat. And now I need to move this image because I know that I need to put my acrylic piece 1 inch down from the top, because I need to leave enough room to put some tape there to hold my acrylic piece down. And then I need it 1 inch over from the left. So my acrylic piece is going to start right here, 1 inch from the top and 1 inch over, and I'm going to go 3 inches this way and 5 inches down. That's where my piece is going to go. So now I can move my image over to where I know I'm going to be putting my acrylic piece. Okay, so I want to look at that. So it looks pretty good width-wise here. I can move it over just a little. And then 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 inches. So I can even move it down just a little bit. Okay, and now it's going to be set to engrave in that spot, but I will remember that I'm going to put my acrylic piece is going to go right here. And you'll see me do that here in a minute. All right, so we're going to hit continue now that we have our image set on our virtual mat. Make sure you have your Cricut machine turned on. It's going to go through and locate it for you, and that'll take a second. So then the next thing we need to do is to set the material. So you're going to come here to where it says Browse All and click on that. And then it's going to give you a list of materials. Now I want to point out here, there is a new heading here that says compatible. If you pick any of the new Cricut tools, it's going to filter through that huge list of some materials that Cricut makers cut through, and it's only going to list the ones that Cricut has kind of certified or approved as using that particular tool. So we're using the engraving tool. So everything on this list they have tried at Cricut to use, and they have already preset the amount of pressure and so forth for this item. So we're going to scroll all the way down here to the bottom where it says Other, and we're going to pick thick acrylic. Now it says thick and thin acrylic are our 2 options for acrylic. I don't know how Cricut is defining those just yet. I've asked for that information and I will let you know that. But I picked thick acrylic for mine and it worked beautifully. So we're just going to pick thick acrylic and click Done. And then of course it's going to prompt you, Design Space will prompt you to load your engraving tip, which I'll show you here in a minute, and then to get started on your project. So let's continue the process.
Get your mat out. Okay, you want to use the strong grip mat because it's going to have the stickiest adhesive on it to be able to put your acrylic on here. Okay, now this, remember I told you had that protective coating on it. You don't want to scratch a material, but you need to get the edge of the coating up, and I just used my little weeding tool until I could get the edge of this, and then I just peel this right off. Okay, so you want to do that before you engrave. Do not engrave with that on there. Okay, so you want to do both sides. Okay, and this is sticky, so you can just throw that part away. You're not going to reuse that part. Now I've got my acrylic piece, and I want to make sure it's clean. It looks very clean. I just have a microfiber cloth here. I'm just going to wipe across it just to make sure it's clean. Then you're going to determine where your acrylic piece was going to go on your mat. We already talked about that in Design Space. Okay, so once I have this on here, then I know that I was going 1 inch down and 1 inch over. So it's 1, 2, 3, and then 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 down. Okay, and then I'm going to take my masking tape, and even though this is stuck on here fairly well, I want to make sure that it is not going to move around while it's engraving, because that would not be good. So I'm just going to tear off some pieces. I only felt it necessary to put some at the top and at the bottom of my piece. I did not do it all the way around the sides. If you've got a kind of an odd shape, you may decide you want to add a little more tape than you're seeing me use here. But I'm going to go in just like this. Okay, so now I've got my piece prepped and ready to go into my Cricut machine. So I've got my mat lined up here in my Cricut Maker machine. I am going to use my microfiber cloth now that I've kind of touched this, trying to get it on here good, just to make sure there's nothing on that to impede my engraving tool. And then I'm going to hit the go arrow here. Now, I want you to notice I have moved my rollers over. So there's a roller that normally, these white rollers, okay, you need to move them. Okay, so I have moved this one. I want it so it's not going to touch my acrylic piece. So whatever shape you're using, make sure that you've moved your rollers over enough that it's not going to be on your acrylic piece. There's one that normally goes right about here, and I've moved it all the way over to the wheel on the left, and I've moved the other one over to here. Okay, so now this acrylic piece is not going to have those rollers rolling on it, so you want to make sure you've done that part, and then you're ready to hit go. But we need to put our tool in, right? So we're just going to open up the B side. We're going to take out our fine tip tool, move that out of the way, and then we're going to take our engraving, our quick swap housing that has the engraving tip on it, and you're going to take where these gears are, you're going to line this up here where the gears are inside the Cricut Adaptive Tool System, and just set that in there just like that, and then you'll be able to close this clamp. Okay, so now your tool is installed. I've hit the go button. Now what you're going to see it do is that it'll go all the way, the tool will go all the way over here, and it's going to be doing some spinning. That is the machine making sure that you have the correct tool installed. If for some reason I forgot to switch it out and I still had my fine tip blade in it, on the design space screen it would say, hey, you have the wrong tool in, install the right tool. So it's kind of foolproof. And now you're going to notice it's going to start doing the engraving. So it's going to make several passes over this, and it is going to do part of the design. All right. As it gets to a certain point in your design, you're going to see that the tool is going to pause, and it's going to do a spinning kind of thing. And that is just how this particular tool is kind of adjusting itself. So don't be alarmed when it does that. We should see it here in a minute. You know, it'll do part of your design. This one was a little bit complicated. Had a lot going on the design. This is, you hear it? And it's spinning now. The whole thing is spinning on the inside there. And that's totally normal. That's what it's supposed to do. And I didn't want you to be alarmed if you saw that, okay? And think there was something wrong with your machine. So I wanted to make sure that we got to that point. Now I'm just going to go ahead and let this continue to do this. That tool may spin 2 or 3 times as it continues to engrave, depending upon how big and complicated your engraving project is. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and keep this going, and then I'll come back when it is ready to take off the mat. Okay, now that we have finished doing the engraving, I'm going to show you what I recommend you do next. Of course, you're going to take your tape off. Now, engraving is actually kind of slicing into your material, and it's going to leave some residue behind, okay? And so what I did was I used some of this tape, and I just kind of rolled it around my fingers like this, and I used that to pick up the extra pieces that it's almost like there's lint on here where it has engraved out of, indented, rather, scraped, whatever you want to call it, the acrylic. Okay, so you want to make sure you get all of that up off of here, off the image, and you can see here now it's on my piece of tape. Okay, so I found that to be the easiest way to do it. And then I'm going to take my mat and I'm going to flip it over and just kind of bend it just a little bit till I can pull off my acrylic piece. Okay, now once I have my acrylic piece off, I can then take my microfiber towel and clean this up. Just kind of really polish it up here. Make sure that any fingerprints or the stickiness from the mat, I want to make sure that it is clear as possible. And then I'm going to take my little light box and I'm going to turn it on. And here we go. Here we have our lighted sign. As easy as that. Super simple. It looks beautiful. What are you going to make with your acrylic and the new Cricut Maker Engraving Tool? Let me know if you guys have any questions that I can answer. I'm always happy to do that. Be sure and subscribe to my YouTube channel. I have a lot more tutorial videos coming out using the new Cricut Maker tools. And hit that subscribe, the notification button, so you know when new videos are coming. Come join us in the Let's Learn Cricut Design Space Facebook group or my Cricut Maker with Debbie O'Neill Facebook group. I'll see you guys around the crafting world. Happy crafting!